Hello, internet friends, and it's been way too long. But we're here now. I have a new computer that's able to edit videos on, one that doesn't give me the little spinny wheel every time I click something. So let's get this started. Today we have 5 tales from subscribers, a cat who senses danger, the aftermath of a visit to a cemetery, a possible glitch in the fabric of reality, an unwelcome intruder who may be less than human, and the very real dangers of the man in the van. So with all that to look forward to, here we go with our first from Sean Miastkowski. Good at spelling names, terrible at pronouncing them. Let's get into it. My clanmates and I were playing World of Tanks, and during our battle, one of them overheard a loud crashing sound, apparently coming from my mic. My family was gone for the weekend, and both cats were sleeping in my room. I left my room, and the oldest cat followed me. I took a shotgun that my brother had put in his room, put a shell in it, didn't cock it, though. I stayed silent, listening. And after about 5 minutes, my cat left my side, and I heard her thundering down the stairs, as she's a rather large cat, followed by defensive hisses and growls. I ran to the basement where I heard footsteps, and I called out, "Whoever is down there, speak now or I will blow your fucking brains out." I cocked the gun so if someone was there, they could hear it. But nothing responded. I turned the lights on and proceeded to sweep the basement. I found nothing, yet my cat kept hissing. This went on for 5 minutes, and then she suddenly went quiet and quietly went up the stairs. This was rather strange, as she would always run up and down the stairs, not walk. This phenomenon went on for an entire week at exactly the same time each night. The loud crashing sound appeared again. Tinkerbell would hiss and walk quietly back up the steps. On the 4th night of hearing this, I called the police to see if they had a free officer to come check the place out. An officer responded quickly, and I explained the situation to him. He responded with, "We've been getting calls at 11:38 p.m. mentioning the same phenomenon that you've experienced at a different house. All I have to say about this encounter is at least I wasn't the only one." First of all, your cat's name is Tinkerbell. That's adorable. Secondly, how odd that 2 of you experienced the same thing at the same time to boot. That's one on-time phantom, or criminal. At least it only lasted a week, right? Hopefully everything is back to normal for you. Thank you for sharing your story. On to the next from FreakGirl04. That's FreakGRL04. Here we go. I had an experience that started about 3 or 4 years ago. My sister and I took some friends to a cemetery just a few minutes outside of the town we live in. Our neighbor used to tell us about it, and we had gotten rather curious. We dropped off our friends in front of the steps that lead up into an Amish field and into the fenced-in cemetery. We were on our cell phone at the bottom of the hill when one girl up in the cemetery claimed that there were no headstones. We go past this cemetery all the time, and we know there is in fact a cemetery up there, and in the fall you can see the stones from the road. They were walking through a cemetery, but not seeing anything. We left because I had to go to work, and after about an hour, my sister comes into work to see me and tells me that there was not only a cemetery on the hill when she went, but 3 cemeteries. Now, here's the freaky part. After the trip to the cemetery, things started happening. I was walking up the steps to the 2nd floor of our house and felt a hand wrap around my ankle, sort of pulling my foot away, but I tried not to think much of it at the time. A couple of days later, I was in the basement doing laundry, and the lid to the washer about slammed down on my hand. And not just a soft thud, I mean a very loud bang. Not only that, we use a room off of our kitchen next to our back porch for storage, and at the time, we were keeping a rocking horse that was my daughter's. She was too big to use it anymore, so that's where we kept it. When it moved, it made whinnying noises and sounds of galloping hooves and a couple of songs. Not once before they went into that cemetery did that thing make noise in that back room. After they came back, it was a constant thing. We'd go out and check Absolutely nothing could have disturbed it and put it into motion. It could have just been dying batteries, who knows, but it just seems a little too coincidental to me. Just weird things like that would happen late at night. Once in a while, we'd catch a glimpse of what looked like a shadow where there shouldn't have been one on the walls. But the freakiest thing that happened was when my daughter was in school and my sister was at work. I was home alone with our 2 cats, and I fell asleep in a chair in our entry hall. As soon as I'm comfy and almost fully asleep, I hear banging on our kitchen window. This particular window has the screen on the inside, and the window itself swings up and out. It was early spring and still nippy, so that window was closed. And in fact, I was freezing cold and had my feet propped up on an electric heater with a blanket over it, trying to stay warm. I also had one of the cats on my lap, and the other one was nearby. I thought maybe it was a dream and started drifting back to sleep. Again, as soon as I was half asleep, the banging started back up. I got sick of it and went up to my own bed. A few months later, around the 4th of July, my friend and I were parked out in front of my place, just talking. We looked at each other, and I decided on a whim to take a drive to show him where the cemetery was. As we're getting closer, the atmosphere inside of the car was that of an excited child. But as soon as we passed the cemetery, the feeling in the car was gone, and it felt normal again. It's been a couple years now since we drove past the cemetery, and our house has been quiet since. Now, my neighbor, when her kids were teenagers, they too decided to explore the cemetery. They swear the graves move, and that they also had something strange follow them home. They call her she, and she stays in the closet by the front door, usually. I say usually because when my daughter was still potty training, I had brought her inside their house to use the toilet. Instead of going into the half bath, she walks past it and to the basement steps. She looks down into my neighbor's basement and says, "She's down there." I said, "Who's down there?" My daughter then repeats, "She's down there." And I told her that our neighbor was outside, and my daughter then repeats, "But she's down there." And then it was like she snapped out of it and went back to the half bath and used the toilet like nothing had happened. The closet that she stays in most of the time, she doesn't like the door to be closed. In fact, if you close and latch the door, you will hear and see the doorknob turn and the door pop back open. The first time it happened to me, it freaked me out, but now it's happened so often, I just ignore it most of the time.
I mean, I'm sure the strange occurrences weren't cool, but it's kind of neat that you were just able to drive by and feel like there was this sense of returning peace to your home. Your neighbor, on the other hand, just don't go there again. No desire to meet she. Thanks for your story. I appreciate that. I will not be visiting your neighbor anytime soon. Next up, we have from Noah, parentheses Vesuvius. Sorry, I don't know what it is about the parentheses. I just get excited about the parentheses, okay? Without further ado, Noah, Vesuvius. Here we go.
I'm not sure if this was a glitch in the system or something of the paranormal. I do have to say, it felt quite unnerving. For some backstory, my best friend sadly ended her life about 3 years ago in 2013. Her death took a huge toll on me and nearly led to my own suicide. After about a year, I removed her from my Skype and Steam to not have that constant reminder of her being gone. A few months ago, back in March, I noticed I had a friend request on Steam. As you can probably tell, it was from my deceased friend. As soon as I saw it, I got shivers running all over my body. I went to check the last time she was online on Steam, and it said she hadn't been on for 3 years. This made me more unnerved. I started to get a bit frightened, but then I thought it might be some hacker trying to get into my account, so I declined the request. 10 minutes later, I got another friend request from the same person. I declined it once again, and every time I declined it, it came back up within 10 minutes. I finally messaged the account saying, "Who is this?" The only response I got was, "Don't." I replied, "Don't what?" They just said don't to everything I asked. At this point, I had a massive wave of paranoia fall over me. I personally don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural, but I have no explanation for this.
Stories like this always bother me just because it's disturbing to think of the implications either way. I'm a skeptic, so what do I have to lean towards but a hacker? People who hack dead people freak me out. If it was something else, that is also disturbing, again, for the implications. Blah. Short and sweet, thanks for sharing. I am truly sorry for your loss, and thank you for choosing to stay with us. We appreciate your company here, and you are all always welcome here. And if you're suffering through something, talk to somebody. It's whatever you have to do to get through it, do it, because you've got tomorrow waiting for you. Sorry for getting all sappy there for a second, but I felt it needed to be said. That's okay, there are appropriate moments for that. Hello, shirt. Alrighty, we're moving right along to number 4, and this one comes to us courtesy of Catherine P. I'm sorry, here we go. Just ignore me. Listen to the story.
So, to set up, my house was an old, square, single-story cabin with the living room in the center and the kitchen, bathroom, and bedrooms attached to the sides. Kinda like how someone's first attempt at building a house in Sims would look. The only thing that kept it warm in the winter was a wood stove in the living room that I'd sleep in front of on the couch when it was really cold, since my room was super drafty. Another thing to note is that my mom took Ambien to help her sleep, so a foghorn could have gone off next to her and she wouldn't have noticed. One night when I was maybe 4 or 5, my mom and I had gone to bed, but it was cold, so I took my pillow and blanket and moved to the couch as usual and went to sleep. The next thing I remember is waking up and feeling like something was nipping at my foot. Being young and mostly asleep, I just thought it was a dog or something. Moved my foot a bit to shoo it away and went back to sleep. It was about that time I remembered that we didn't have any pets. Naturally, I freaked out and started kicking my feet to get whatever it was off. It apparently didn't like that because it bit down, and I screamed and kicked towards it with my other foot, and it finally let go. I ran to my room and slammed the door shut. In the morning, my mom came into my room with my now ripped blanket and asked me what happened to it. She didn't believe me when I told her, but decided to humor me and look at my foot. But she got quiet when she saw red marks that I didn't make. After that, I stayed with my grandparents for a few days while she made sure a possum or something didn't get into the house, and after she didn't find anything, I came back, but wasn't allowed to sleep in front of the wood stove anymore. A few weeks later, I got up to get a glass of water, but ended up being too scared to and ran back to my bed after I saw a big black animal walking around the couch. It was gone in the morning, and my mom never saw it, whatever it was. I've told the story to a few people. A couple friends said it was a ghost. One said I might have just imagined it. Someone said a hellhound, and someone else said something about demons. All I know is that I haven't seen it since.
Fun fact, when I read this for the first time, I got chills because, as some of you may know, there's a certain creature that freaks me out more than other creatures, and it comes from Native American lore. It's the Wendigo. And when you say that you saw it walking around your couch, for some reason, I imagined it walking on 2 legs because that's how my brain works, and I think it made it 10 times scarier for me, personally, despite the fact that it's already terrifying enough. Thank you for submitting. That would be traumatizing for me. No more wood cabins for me. Okay, and our last one, forewarning, is disturbing in a real world sort of way. Our subscriber and fellow friend Lee says she gets chills anytime she hears the name Mr. Mike, and after this story, I think you'll understand why.
When I was around 12 years old in 7th grade, I went to a Catholic school. I lived in another district, so I was part of the bus transferring system, and this basically means that a bus picks you up at your house, then you transfer to another bus at another school before you're taken to your own school. I was a shy kid, so I always sat in the front of the bus with my brothers right behind Mr. Mike. Mr. Mike was a thin, tall, balding man that must have been in his late 30s to early 40s. Everyone loved him because he was funny and kind, unlike the other bus drivers that worked in the district. He seemed to genuinely care about the kids. He always wanted to know who was on the honor roll and was famous for giving away candy after report cards were sent out. Because I went to a different school than the other kids, he treated me differently. Every morning, me and my brothers would be the first on the bus because we were the transfers, and he seemed to take more of an interest in my brothers than me because they were outgoing. I didn't mind because I was a preteen girl, and the last thing on my mind was getting attention from the bus driver. One Friday in the winter, everybody was getting sick. My brothers had come down with the flu, and I wasn't the least bit sick. I was nervous because I never transferred to another bus by myself before, though I did it every day with my brothers. While my brothers and I would usually wait on the former bus for a bit before going to the next bus, I went to Mr. Mike's bus immediately so I didn't get crushed by the swarm of kids outside. I remember clearly that it was snowing a lot that day, and Mr. Mike was talking to me about how we might get to go home early because of it. I was the only person on the bus, and I kept silent, but he didn't seem to get the hint. He started to ask me questions about myself, mostly about my school and my brothers. He asked what kind of music I liked, what sports I played, etc. I was completely caught off guard, though, when he asked me what I usually do after school. I didn't see how that was any of his business, but I also didn't see the harm in telling him that both my parents worked, and my older brother, who was 15 at the time, usually took care of us until my parents came home. He then asked me if we would like to go out for ice cream sometime with him. I felt uneasy, but Mr. Mike had a kind face and a kind voice. I simply said that I didn't think my parents would go for it, but he was persistent and spewing some random nonsense about his favorite ice cream shop in town and how much he thought I would love it. I was relieved when the other students finally got on the bus. I had a weird feeling the entire weekend, but refused to tell my mom why in case she would yell at me for talking to strangers like that. She had this pre-existing idea that all older men wanted to kidnap little girls like me. Over the weekend, I had been playing in the snow with my neighbor when we noticed a beat-up minivan across the street. We live right near a hospital, so cars in our street aren't out of the ordinary. The only unusual thing was that someone was clearly inside the car. I assumed that maybe he was getting his things together before leaving or was on the phone, so we continued playing. After a while, we went inside to warm up and play. When we got back outside, the car was still there. My neighbor convinced me to tell my mom, so I did. My mom told us to go inside and watch the car from the window before deciding to call the police. What happened over the next couple of days shocked the town. The man in the car was Mr. Mike, and it wasn't the first time he'd been caught watching children. In his car, they found a video camera along with a makeshift bed in the back seat, and when they searched his computer, it was nearly filled with child pornography. They also found his MySpace open, where he was posing as a teen boy and had even had conversations with young girls online about meeting up. After that, my dad drove me to school for the rest of the year, despite the fact that the district hired a new driver. And that's my story about how I helped convict a sexual predator. The fact that I was alone with him on an empty bus haunts me to this day, not to mention the thought that I probably wasn't the only kid that he's stalked.
Yeah, there's definitely a reason your mother fears that kind of stuff, and that's because it actually happens, unfortunately. Glad you are safe, Lee, and glad the man was taken away, and just as a quick little preachy moment from Paranoid Lessons of yours truly, trust your instincts, kids. Kid or not, trust your instincts. Sometimes your brain lies to you, but I feel like your instincts know more than I think we care to admit, so be careful out there. Alright guys, that's all we've got for this week. If you have a creepy experience or story you haven't shared, you can comment down below, or you can send it to subscribestorytime@gmail.com. Hello, raspy voice. That's all I have for you today. I will see you in the next video. Have a good night.